2 Samuel 9. David asked, "Is there anyone remaining from the family of Saul I can show kindness to for Jonathan's sake?" There was a servant of Saul's family named Ziba. They summoned him to David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "I am your servant," he replied. So the king asked, "Is there anyone left of Saul's family that I can show the kindness of God to?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still Jonathan's son, who was injured in both feet." The king asked him, "Where is he?" Ziba answered the king, "You will find him in Lodebar, at the house of Machir, son of Amiel." So King David had him brought from the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodebar. Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David, fell face down, and paid homage. David said, "Mephibosheth, I am your servant," he replied. "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "since I intend to show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all your grandfather Saul's field, and you will always eat meals at my table." Mephibosheth paid homage and said, "What is your servant that you take an interest in a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Saul's attendant Ziba and said to him, "I have given to you, master grandson, all that belonged to Saul and his family. You, your son, and your servants are to work the ground for him, and you are to bring in the crops, so your master's grandson will have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, is always to eat in my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Ziba said to the king, "Your servant will do all my lord the king command." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table just like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. All those living in Ziba's house were Mephibosheth's servants. However, Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table. His feet has been injured.
2 Samuel 10. Sometime later, the king of the Amorites died, and his son Hanun became king in his place. Then David said, "I'll show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me." So David sent his emissaries to consult Hanun concerning his father. However, when they arrived in the land of the Amorites, the Amorite leader said to Hanun, "Their lord, just because David has sent men with congratulation for you, do you really believe he's showing respect for your father? Instead, hasn't David sent his emissaries in order to scout out the city, spy on it, and demolish it?" So Hanun took David's emissaries, shaved off half their beards, cut their clothes in half at the hips, and sent them away. When this was reported to David, he sent someone to meet them, since they were deeply humiliated. The king said, "Stay in Jericho until your beards grow back, then return." When the Amorites realized they had become repulsive to David, they hired 20,000 foot soldiers from the Amorites of Beth Rabbah and Zobah, 1,000 men from the king of Makkah, and 12,000 men from Tob. David heard about it and sent Joab and all the entire elite troop. The Amorites marched out and lined up in battle formation at the entrance to the city gate, while the Amorites of Zobah and Rohab and the men of Tob and Makkah were in the field by themselves. When Joab saw that there was a battle line in front of him and another behind, he chose some of Israel's finest young men and lined up in formation to engage the Amorites. He placed the rest of the forces under the command of his brother Abishai. They lined up in formation to engage the Amorites. "If the Amorites are too strong for me," Joab said, "then you will be my help. However, if the Amorites are too strong for you, I'll come to help. Be strong. Let's prove ourselves strong for our people and for the cities of our God. May the Lord's will be done." Joab and his troop advised to fight against the Amorites, and they fled before him. When the Amorites saw that the Amorites had fled, they too fled before Abishai and entered the city. So Joab withdrew from the attack against the Amorites and went to Jerusalem. When the Amorites saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they regrouped. Hadassah sent messengers to bring the Amorites who were beyond the Euphrates River, and they came to Halam with Shobach, commander of Hadassah's army leader, leading them. When this was reported to David, he gathered all Israel across the Jordan and went to Halam. Then the Amorites lined up to engage David in battle and fought against him, but the Amorites fled before Israel, and David killed 700 of their chariots and 40,000 foot soldiers. He also struck down Shobach, commander of their army, who died there. When all the kings were Hadassah's subjects saw that they have been defeated by Israel, they made peace with Israel and became their subjects. After this, the Amorites were afraid to ever help the Amorites again.
2 Samuel chapter 11. In the spring, when kings marched out to war, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and strolled around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing, a very beautiful woman. So David sent someone to inquire about her, and he said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam and wife of Uriah the Hittite?" David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to him, he slept with her. Now she had just been purifying herself from her uncleanness. Afterwards, she returned home. The woman conceived and sent word to inform David, "I am pregnant." David sent orders to Joab, "Send me to Uriah the Hittite." So Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab and the troops were doing and how the war was going. Then he said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and the gift from the king followed him. But Uriah slept at the door of the palace with all his master's servants. He did not go down to his house. When it was reported to David, Uriah didn't go home. David questioned Uriah, "Haven't you just come from a journey? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah answered David, "The ark, Israel and Judah are dwelling in tents, and my master Joab and his soldiers are camping in the open field. How can I enter my house to eat and drink and sleep with my wife? As surely as you live, and by your life, I will not to do this. Stay here today also," David said to Uriah, "and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the next. And David invited Uriah to eat and drink with him, and David got him drunk. He went out in the evening to lie down on his cot with his master's servants, but he did not go home. The next morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In the letter he wrote, "Put Uriah at the front of the fiercest fighting, then withdraw from him so he is struck down and dies." When Joab was besieging the city, he put Uriah in the place where he knew the best enemy soldiers were. Then the men of the city came out and attacked Joab, and some of the men from David's soldiers fell in battle. Uriah the Hittite also died. Joab sent someone to report to David all the details of the battle. He commanded the messenger, "When you finish telling the king all the details of the battle, if the king's anger gets stirred up and he asks you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you realize they would shoot from the top of the wall at Thebez, who struck Abimelech, son of Jebuseth? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the top of the wall so that he died? Why did you get so close to the wall? Then say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also." And the messenger left. When he arrived, he reported to David all that Joab had sent him to tell. The messengers reported to David, "The men gained advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we counterattacked right up to the entrance of the city gate. However, the archer shot down on your servants from the top of the wall, and some of the king's servants died. Your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead." David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab, don't let this matter upset you, because this sword devours all alike. Intensify your fight against the city and demolish it. Encourage him." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah had died, she mourned for him. When the time of mourning ended, David had her brought to his house. She became his wife and bore him a son. However, the Lord considered what David had done to be evil.
2 Samuel 12. So the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he arrived, he said to him, "There were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very large flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except for one small ewe lamb that he had brought. He raised her, she grew up with him and with his children. From his major food, she would eat, from his cup she would drink, and in his arms she would sleep. She was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man could not bring himself to take one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest. David was frustrated with the man and said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die, because he has done this thing and shown no pity. He must pay 4 lambs for that lamb." Nathan replied to David, "You are the man. This is what the Lord God of Israel says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I rescued you from Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your hand. And I gave you the house of Israel and Judah, and if that was not enough, I would have given you even more. Why then have you despised the Lord's command by doing what I considered evil? You struck down Uriah and Hittite with a sword, and took his wife as your own wife. You murdered him with the Ammonite sword. Now, therefore, the sword will never leave your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own wife. This is what the Lord says. I am going to bring disaster on you. From your own family I will take your wives and give them to another before your very eyes, and he'll sleep with them in broad daylight. You acted in secret, but I will do this before all Israel and in broad daylight. David responded to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Then Nathan replied to David, and the Lord has taken away your sin. You will not die. However, because you treated the Lord with such contempt in this matter, the son born to you will die. Then Nathan went home. The Lord struck the baby that Uriah's wife had born to David, and he became deathly ill. David pleaded with God for the boy. He fasted, went home, and spent the night lying on the ground. The elder of his house stood beside him to get him up from the ground, but he was unwilling and would not eat anything with them. On the 7th day the baby died, but David's servants were afraid to tell him. The baby was dead, they said. Look, while the baby was alive, we spoke to him, and he wouldn't listen to us. So how can we tell him the baby is dead? He may do something desperate. When David saw that his servants were whispering to each other, he guessed that the baby was dead. So he asked his servants, Is the baby dead? He is dead, they replied. Then David got up from the ground. He washed, anointed himself, changed his clothes, went to the Lord's house, and worshipped. Then he went home and requested something to eat. So they served him food, and he ate. His servant asking him, Why have you done this while the baby was alive? You fasted and wept, but when he died, you got up and ate food. He answered, While the baby was alive, I fasted and wept, because I thought, who knows? The Lord may be gracious to me and let him live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I'll go to him, but he will never return to me." Then David confronted his wife, Bathsheba. He went to her and slept with her. She gave birth to a son and named him Solomon. The Lord loved him, and he sent a message through the prophet Nathan, who named him Jediah. Because of the Lord, Joab brought against Rabbah of the Ammonites, and captured the royal fortress. Then Joab sent messengers to David to say, I have fought against Rabbah and have also captured its water supply. Now, therefore, assemble the rest of the troops, lay siege to the city and capture it. Otherwise, I'll be the one to capture the city, and it will be named after me. So David assembled all the troops and went to Rabbah. He fought against it and captured it. He took the crown from the head of their king, and it was placed on David's head. The crown weighed 75 pounds of gold, and it had a precious stone in it. In addition, David took away a large quantity of plunder from the city. He removed the people who were in the city, put them to work with saws, iron picks, and iron axes, and to labor at brickmaking. He did the same to all the Ammonite cities. Then he and all his troops returned to Jerusalem.